If I ruled the world, I love 'em, baby.
Welcome to episode number 23 of If I Ruled the World podcast. And we have in this quote-unquote studio, which is my living room, today, this rainy Saturday afternoon, a friend, Kevin Egan. How are you, Kevin?
I'm doing well. Thanks for inviting me down here.
Well, thanks for coming here before you go out even more east than we are right now.
Well, close to his old stomping grounds, really. I mean,
Well, he's a Holbrook native.
Yeah. We moved to Holbrook when I was 6 months old, and my mom still lives in the house where I grew up. And it's still home to me. I still can, like if people ask me where I'm from, like Holbrook, New York. That's what I'll tell them. Yeah. So.
And that's the thing. Like I've known you for years, but I feel like we've crossed paths in many ways. I don't know you. We sort of know of each other, and you have a history in New York hardcore with Beyond, and of course Long Island hardcore with 1.6 Band. And I think outside looking in, everybody thinks we probably all know each other, but your full history is intriguing to me, and I kind of want to like get down the history of what you've done, and I'd like to get to know you better, Kevin Egan.
Cool.
Yeah, me too.
So, Kevin.
Yes.
We all know you were in Beyond, but I'm just curious, like, how did you get up to that point? When, people don't realize back then, getting from Holbrook to New York City, it was a big deal seeing shows. There really wasn't a Long Island hardcore scene. So, how did that all start for you?
I was a metalhead first. I was into metal first. Actually, this is a story that I've tried to tell a couple of times, either in for documentaries or whatever, and I don't think I ever really have told it properly. So I'm going to try and.
This is an If I Ruled the World exclusive.
Yeah, exclusive. I'm really going to try and nail it this time because it was really like such a transformative moment for me. Like I grew up watching sports, playing sports. My dad is a hockey player, so sports is sort of like ingrained in like my family. But there was one day I was 13 years old, and I was working as a CIT at a day camp in Oakdale. Camp LaSalle was LaSalle Military Academy.
Okay. What's a CIT? Just for
counselor in training.
Counselor. Okay.
Yeah. And my friend Jason snuck up behind me. It was during a rainstorm, and snuck up behind me and threw headphones over my ears and was like, "You gotta hear this song." And it was Twisted Sister's "We're Not Gonna Take It."
Okay. And
I knew Twisted Sister from Long Island. My brother and I listened to a lot of music. I remember he came home with Black Sabbath's "Paranoid" and Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap one day, and that was sort of like the beginning of something. But it really wasn't until I heard "We're Not Gonna Take It," like just something about those drums at 13 years old, hearing those, I felt electrified. I felt powerful, like all those things that heavy music makes you feel.
Yeah.
It is one hell of an anthem that like
I feel like it's the greatest anthem.
Second to none.
And I think it resonates with even like kids from today. I was in Montreal once in a club, and it was a dance club, but out of nowhere they played "We're Not Gonna Take It," and everybody on the dance floor went crazy.
Right.
And then even when I was at Occupy Wall Street, like that was like sort of like a theme. Like the people didn't know the verses or whatever, but
the actual chorus. Yeah, I guess
like
it's...
when everybody's like, crowded together and there's barriers and they're trying to break these barriers. They're singing "We're Not Gonna Take It." It was interesting because as a song that meant a lot to me as a 13-year-old kid, now as a 40-something-year-old, I was witnessing it in another context. It was really interesting. But that was the beginning. That moment when I first heard "We're Not Gonna Take It." From then on, I just soaked up metal. I just listened to like a ton of metal. I just wanted to play metal. I was obsessed with metal. And then I bought a guitar, or my mom bought me a guitar, and I'm left-handed, but the guy at Focus 2 Guitar, I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember that, but in Medford on Route 1 on 112, Focus 2 Guitars was sort of like the premier guitar store in this part of Long Island, and they bought me. We told the guy I was lefty, and he was like, everyone just learns righty, which is so not true.
Yeah, it's so not true.
Like Jimi Hendrix and Paul McCartney are two left-handed guitar players.
That's a guy trying to sell what he has.
Yeah.
Not what you
was
need.
exactly.
Yeah.
So we bought the right-hand guitar, and I just couldn't strum. No matter what I did, I just could not. I can still pick up a right-handed guitar and I can form chords, but I could not strum with this hand because I'm very dominantly left-handed. I actually started off playing drums in like marching band and stuff when I was a kid, but I was never any good because I couldn't get my rolls even because I'm so dominantly left-handed. So then, like, all my friends were playing guitars and forming bands, and it was, I was like, shit, what am I going to do? And then when I got into hardcore, I bought my first hardcore record at Record Stop, and they had in Ronkonkoma on Portion Road, they had a little hardcore section in the back with hardcore and punk records, and one day I was like, all right, let me check it out, and I came across the 7 Seconds record, The Crew, and I saw the singer's name was Kevin Seconds, and for some reason, like, that spoke to me. I was like, like this, I have to buy this record. So I bought it, I loved it, and then that led to Youth of Today, and that's sort of, then I went down the hardcore path, and then that's when it was obvious to me, like, well, I can do this, I can sing this, and then I met Tom Capone through friends from high school. We went to high school together. He was, when we were kids, he was a metalhead early on, like not like your Iron Maiden metalhead. In like 1982, he was like walking around our junior high school wearing like Venom T-shirts.
Oh yeah.
And I guarantee you, he was the only one within 50 miles who knew who Venom,
Him and Ron.
And for some reason, he like knew a lot of people in bands. Like, he did a fanzine like way, like called Mutilator, that was way early. I don't know, maybe like 1984 or something like that. So he knew like the guys in Nuclear Assault, and he knew like all these people in these metal bands as a teenager. Mm-hmm. So we became friends at the end of 11th grade, and he was in a band called at the time he was in a band called Third Planet with the guys from 1.6 bands, that was kind of hardcore-ish, a little more metal than Beyond, but the Beyond song Vitality and the Beyond song Effort were both Third Planet songs that he took to Beyond after Third Planet broke up. So when they broke up, he was kind of depressed, and then we decided, so then I said to him, I was like, well, let's do a band. I can sing. I could sing along to like Minor Threat. At that time I was already singing along to Minor Threat records, Youth of Today records. So then he auditioned me. We were driving down Broadway in Holbrook, probably heading to like the Sunvet Mall or something, and he put in a Uniform Choice tape in the tape player in my car, and he's like, all right, sing along. Let's like whatever. So I just did it. I just banged out Screaming for Change, and then he just shut Uniform Choice, yeah. and then he after like 30 seconds he shut it off. He's like, all right, let's start a band. So that was the beginning of it, and then he was just like a writing machine. He wrote all the time, and he wrote some pretty impressive lyrics for like a 16-year-old kid. Because even now, as a 48-year-old man, I look at those lyrics and I'm still moved by them. I'm still happy to sing them because they were, I don't know, they're just great. He just wrote great lyrics. And so, yeah, that was the beginning of it. And
had you gone to hardcore shows at that point, or you still?
Yeah, I went to my first hardcore show. Well, I was going to going to Sundance to a lot of metal shows.
Yeah.
At the time, and then the hardcore, it was right at the time of crossover. So like the DRI crossover record came out, and the Agnostic Front crossover record came out. So suddenly there were hardcore shows out at Sundance also.
Yeah.
So I think the first hardcore show I ever went to, it was Agnostic Front and the Mentors at Sundance, and so that was the first. And then my first time at CB's, we drove. It was it was first time at CB's. I went with Tom Capone, and there's this guy, another guy from Holbrook called Aldo, who lived around the corner from Tom Capone. He was older. He was probably like 23, 24. He had like a mustache. Like he looked like an adult. But it was him and his friend Tony, who was older, and he was like a punk rocker. And they offered to drive Tom Capone and me to CB's. It was Uniform Choice and Warzone, and I can't remember who else played. So we were here like in this car with these adults, and I remember we stopped traffic around like the Cross Island Parkway, like around exit 30, 31. And Tony just he wants to prove to us how punk he is. So Tony gets out of the car and like takes a piss like right there, like on the side of the expressway. And like even as kids, like Tom and I were like, this guy's a clown. Like this guy's like trying to show off, and we were in like the hardcore vibe, back then, like punk was over and hardcore was like, we were also into like positivity and stuff like that. So like we thought he was like, corny or whatever.
Right.
So then we went to Uniform Choice and Warzone, and I still had long hair. I still had like my metal hair at this time, which was an issue at hardcore shows back then. If you showed up with long hair, sometimes skinheads would pull your hair, or you'd even get beat up. I never had an issue at hardcore shows about my hair ever.
Were you waiting for an issue? Like
I was kind of always looking over my shoulder. It was always a possibility because I would see it happen sometimes, but it never happened to me. I was just lucky in that sense.
I would see someone walk in with long hair or blue hair or something like that into CBS, and I'm like, he either knows someone, he's in a band, or he's going to get his ass kicked. And it's luckily devoid of that these days, but back then, that's really what happened.
Yeah. I eventually did cut my hair I think that year. Like once we knew Beyond was going to like do like be our band, I wanted to totally be hardcore, so then I cut my hair, but yeah, it was part of the crossover thing. There was a lot of metal and hardcore crossing over, and I think as a result, those two factions were usually at the same show a lot of the time.
Yeah, so, Sundance would have like Nuclear Assault, and then like all these hardcore bands, and CB's would do that to some degree. If they had a metal band, it would have to have hardcore bands on there. So there was a crossover. Agnostic Front was like dipping into metal. Cro-Mags, Leeway, it was right there.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, you would see, I remember seeing Agnostic Front. Nuclear Assault and Leeway together.
Yeah.
And even though Leeway was metal, like I always considered them like hard, like they looked hardcore, and they sounded metal.
Right.
And actually, they were for the long time. They were my favorite band because of that. Because they didn't. I feel like when Agnostic Front did the crossover record, I don't know. It didn't speak to me the way that Leeway sounded to me like Metallica, and they sounded like the metal bands that I really love, but for some reason they had this like they felt hardcore too, and they had it was just a perfect band for me at that time. So yeah.
Great vocals, great melody. Definitely. I think for people like us, like I grew, like my entry was also like for metal. But I loved melody. So, something like Leeway did speak to me where you're like, okay, like there's the aggression, but there's also like a ton of melody because Eddie was just a great singer.
He was an amazing singer, and the height of his vocal abilities. I didn't really follow them into the 90s. I think the last time I saw them was 1988. It was 88. I think it was maybe 89 when they played the Super Bowl of Hardcore at the Ritz, and he was that was the best his voice ever sounded like, and it was better than what it was. That was the shame about that record too, because I feel like they became better musicians after that record was recorded, and it's still one of the best things to ever come out of New York. But I think if that record was recorded like a little bit later, it would have been even more special because it had because his voice just took off. Like his voice just sounded amazing. So anyway, at that show, at the Ritz, I remember him. He walked along. There was the balcony that went all the way around, and he had like a wireless microphone, and he sang, and he walked like along the whole thing. I was like, this guy is a maniac.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, he's fantastic. He's really great.
Yeah, having had him on the podcast, I'm just going to go ahead and speak on Eddie's behalf and say that he will agree with everything you just said.
Yeah, I listened to that thing. Yeah, he was really such an important person musically for New York hardcore,
and
definitely.
Down to earth and a great guy.
Yeah, and still doing it. Like I like to see people that just, it's not like a money thing. People just are so passionate, like we're all musicians, and whether we carry on into a podcast or continue to do bands, it's fun to see somebody like Eddie, who also had a podcast. Yeah, he wants to do that as well. So I like to see, no matter what age you are, that you're still trying to do shit.
Yeah, he just wants to do it. He's under no pretense of.
Yeah, there are no rules. Like that's the one thing that I'm realizing as I get older. You're sort of expected to not be playing loud music anymore when you're older. There's sort of like these like social expectations that people sort of impose on you, but I don't know. I still want to play loud music. Like I still want to like rock. Like to put it simply.
I know, Kevin. When you were a kid, what did a 45-year-old look like to you?
Like
grandparents,
like
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It blows my mind because I'm like, we're if you looked at us now, you'd be like, we don't look, I guess we're still wearing cargo shorts or whatever, but well, maybe not today. But it's just it's a different thing. People don't look and act like what you remember, and then you get to that point, and then you're like, am I supposed to be doing this? Am I supposed to be doing something else? And there is no rules. I mean, that's the greatest part about getting older sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure like 15-year-old kids looking at me like this old man is gonna, but whatever. Like he's, he doesn't understand where I'm. I understand where he's from because I experienced it, but he hasn't experienced, being someone in their 40s. So yeah, I just still feel it. Like I just still feel like I want to play music, and I still want to, like even, I have, besides playing heavy music, I also write songs on my acoustic guitar, and like could do other stuff like that. But yeah, I still want to do it, and I'll just, I'll keep doing it until, either I can't do it anymore, or the only problem is the noise at my ears sometimes ring a lot more than they used to, but other than that,
right there with you.
Yeah.
Every now and then I'll be laying, I'm like, oh, I hear it. And you remember that commercial? Like when we were like, like it was like this like dummy head, and you see like the red dot in the ear. It's just like, what the fuck is that? Yeah, that never happened to me. So,
and so
Beyond.
You get into Beyond. Like, what was your first shows? That whole thing.
We did our first show at the Right Track Inn. Our bass player at the time was Lance, who went on to play with 1.6 Band, and Dominic Biacco, who is a close high school friend even to this day. We played a show at Right Track Inn with another band called Inner Strength, and in Inner Strength was Victor Cara, our friend Rob Porta, who was a high school friend, and Alan Cage. So the two bands played together, and we were all friends. We were all like, we'd all like meet up on Friday nights and hang out in the parking lot or do whatever kids do. And then when after we played that show, Tom, I don't want to pass the blame on to Tom because I definitely agreed to it. But he was like, listen, if we want to play CBs, we want to play like out of town shows. Like Dominic and Lance might not be the best fit for that because the city was no joke back then.
Yeah.
Especially the Lower East Side and like where CB's was, it was dangerous. So they were like Long Island kids, and they were like nervous about going to the city, and they're like, why can't we just play on Long Island? But Tom and I wanted to play CB's. That was it. Like we wanted to, play CB's and become part of the hardcore scene. So we eventually decided that we would switch Dominic and Lance with Vic Takara on second guitar, Rob Porter on bass, and Alan Cage on drums. So basically, we took like the rhythm section for Inner Strength, and we used it for Beyond. And then
I know you don't want to blame Tom, but I'm with Tom. It was a pretty good decision. It's not bad.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I mean, Lance and Dominic are easily the two best musicians that I know. Like to this day, they are incredible. Lance is he's like a Steve Harris guy, like from Iron Maiden. Like he plays exactly like Steve Harris, and he did the stuff that he did in 1.6 Band. Like to this day, like boggles my mind.
But as far as 17-year-old decision making, it's not that bad.
Yeah. I mean, we had to, it was a thing we had to make. It for me, I felt like it was like sort of like my journey into adulthood. Like it was the first time I had to make a decision where like I was going to hurt someone I knew. And that, I harbored a lot of guilt about that over the years. So we did a reunion show with Dominic in 2006. That went really well. And then we actually started to do with when we've been doing reunion shows, or I don't even call them reunion shows anymore. Like I feel like Beyond is like a semi-functioning band again. I mean, we don't.
Oh, really? Okay.
Well, I mean, we play maybe like 3 shows a year.
Yeah.
Which. In 2006, we did one show, and that was our first show in 18 years or something like that.
How does that come about that you guys just get together in 2006?
I don't know what started. Someone contacted Tom, and then he contacted me, and then Vic was living in California at the time. He's in Japan now, but he was living in California at the time. So I think we were like, as long as we can fly Vic in to do it, we'll do it. And then he came, and it was great. Like these, like I said, these guys were like my high school friends. These were like my friends. So whenever we do these shows, it's just like we're kids again. Like all the old jokes come back, and we just become really silly, and and I love it. I love it for that reason. So
and you still connect with those lyrics, like I mean, you were like 17, right?
Yeah. I mean, most. Sometimes, I'm like, I mean, as an adult, I can look at those lyrics and be like, oh, well, we could have probably, or even, even as, just, I structure sentences better than we did back then. So like I can, I've noticed grammar mistakes, but like, it's hardcore, so like right. The grammar should be wrong, right? It should, if you're writing hardcore songs with proper grammar, then like you're probably not doing it right.
They can be wrong, but they can also be like Rick to Life wrong.
Oh, yeah,
and we just want to like just that's as far as you want to go, and you want to just back it off.
Yeah, you
want to
go in the middle there.
Like a little bit.
Right, exactly. So yeah, for the most part, I think Tom wrote one song about death, what awaits us, that. It resonates with me now, that my mortality is actually like, I just assumed when I was 18 years old that I was going to live forever, and it's only been like the last few years that I'm starting to realize like, oh, like there's going to be an end to this. Like,
shitty feeling.
Yeah. No, it sucks. And I'm not even close to like being able to resolve that. But, so what awaits us? Sort of like it's a different song to me now, because I remember he told me he wrote it when his grandparents passed, or his grandparents were elderly and they were sort of like at the end, and that's how I sang it with that in mind. And now like I mean, I'm in midlife, but now that like, like I said, that death is suddenly something that's
like a different meaning. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a different meaning. So I use that. I'm thinking of that like when I sing What Awaits Us. And Alan Cage wrote these really great lyrics to a song called Time Stands Still, which is on the album. And I don't even know if we ever played that song live because we recorded the album pretty much after we broke up. We might have played a couple of more shows after that, but this song Time Stands Still, it's sort of about time just getting away from you, and that and suddenly like you're aging, and you don't you're not feeling things as passionately as you used to, and that can be troubling. And as a kid, I remember reading those lyrics and not really getting them, but like okay, like they fit the music, and I was willing to like sing anything that they gave me. But now that I've that I'm older and I've experienced those things, like that song is something that really sticks out for me lyrically, because now I totally get it, and now I can sing that song like with a totally different approach. So
yeah, I mean, for me, it really weird connection. Being younger, 14, 15, 16, you watch stuff like Faces of Death or whatever. And, I just watched them, and it was just like this like shock value, and you see these people, and you're like, oh, shit, death. Now, as I get older, I'm like, I don't want to watch that, because, like, fast forward, like, 25 years later, and you're just closer to there, and, at 15, you don't think about that, and now I'm just like, yeah, I'm not, I want to have a good day. I don't want to watch this.
Yeah. I mean, I try not to think about it. I don't know how successfully I am at doing that. I mean, it's a game you're never going to win, so I mean,
yeah.
But it's just, it's something that pops into my mind more than I would like it to.
I think it just keeps you going. Like, I think maybe that's the flame, Like we were talking about Eddie or any one of us, it's like, you think of everything that you want to do, and it's like, all right, now I want to wake up, do this podcast, I want to go write a song, I want to fucking, everything creative that you want to get out. I guess it's just the ultimate like fire under the ass.
Yeah, no, I mean it's true. Like when you realize your mortality, then you think, oh, like there's a time limit to this. Like I thought we were just playing freeform and no end to this, but so you want to get everything in under the gun before the whistle blows, pretty much. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I still do things, like I was telling you guys about the podcast that I was doing, and that, I still write songs. I write a ton of songs, and I still play in bands, and it's just I don't know, like I do these things just because they make me feel alive, and like I sort of want to like counter that dread that I feel a lot of the other times. Like I feel like if I do more things that make me feel alive, then that'll keep it going.
Yeah, there's nothing like writing that song. There's nothing like fucking around with some chords and finally getting that chorus, finally getting that verse. Like, oh shit, this is it right there, and it just makes you feel good. And you're like, okay, now throw it out into the world. So, going back to Beyond. So, how were you guys like received when you started playing like the more New York area?
We were received insanely well. Like, I would say that what happened to us sort of like sort of set the bar of what was going to happen to me in the future, because we basically we brought our demo down to Some Records, where the one hardcore store in New York City. It was on 6th Street, I think, and we brought our demo there, and we're like, oh, can we, leave some demos here for you to sell or whatever? And Dwayne was like, yeah, okay. And then out of nowhere, so then we went back the next week, and we're like, yeah, we brought those demos. You just selling it? He's like, oh my god, you guys are the guys from this band. Like, oh my god, this demo was amazing. So Dwayne, who was like sort of the center of New York hardcore in a lot of ways, because he was selling all these records to kids that were coming in. Like, he loved our demo, and not only that, like the way John Purcelli told it, the guitar player for Youth of Today, Purcell was working on 2nd Avenue at a health food store, and one day Dwayne, when he first heard our demo, closed up shop. You know, it was before cell phones or whatever. He closed up shop, and he ran down to 2nd Avenue to tell him, like, you have to hear this demo. So then pretty much shortly after that, we got a letter in the mail from John Purcell, who was the guitar player for Youth of Today, who was easily one of our favorite bands. Yeah. They were, I would say, for me back then, my favorite bands were 7 Seconds, Youth of Today, Minor Threat, and Dag Nasty. Those are the bands that I just loved more than anything else. And so then, you know, we got this letter from we were floored. We're like, oh my god! And he's telling us how much he loves the demo and how much he wants us to open up for all his bands. I think they were just starting to do Judge back then, so like Judge, Project X, Youth of Today. So we were just, and then like it opened so many doors for us. Like, we got to open up for all those bands, and he championed us, and he really got the word out there. And it was really because of Purcell that we were able to do all these things.
I mean, that's like, couldn't be more exciting, and that's what it was back then. Your favorite band, and then you get to be on Revelation Records. I mean, it's back then, you're just hitting all the markers. Your demo at some records, Youth of Today, John Purcelli, Revelation Records. That's it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was insane. The problem with that is so later on in life, I just assumed every creative project I did, I was going to put out there, and then somebody important was going to discover it and just get me to the next level. Yeah. But this was really the only time that happened. But still, like, once in a life, it's still, I mean, I still play with Beyond,
Yeah.
and we just played last year. We did the Rev Fest with all those bands, except for Project X. They all played that festival. So
and how interesting is it too that when you get older, because we keep talking like jumping from past to how we are right now, like, you do it, and then you can. It's such a cliche, but you can appreciate it now. Like, anything I do artistically now, I like spend, like, just try and be in that moment, because you just didn't appreciate it back then. You have great memories. But you just didn't have that gratitude.
I think I did appreciate it. Like, I'm a very self-aware person to a fault, because I feel like sometimes my self-awareness is destructive. Mm-hmm. But even back then, like, I was pretty aware of how cool these things that were happening were, and I was loving it. Like, and that's why I loved that's why I loved like Possecore, because it was positive, and I felt good. Like, I was young. Like, I was young, and there was there are these kids singing songs about youth, and it was amazing. Like, we were actually celebrating our youth by doing bands, putting on shows. So I was pretty aware of it, and pretty much the whole way I was enjoying the ride.
Right.
Yeah. So. And
then, why did the band break up?
Several reasons. It's funny because I'm actually working on a film right now about Beyond, but not so much just a straight up documentary. It's really like a sort of like a personal journey kind of thing. And but I was interviewed Tom Capone for the movie, and so like all this stuff is fresh in my mind, because he and I talked on camera about a lot of this stuff. So Vic's parents moved to California. I think his dad got a new job or something, but they moved to Southern California, and Vic was going with him. So we played our last show with Vic in Cleveland, Ohio, and then Vic and Alan drove Vic's car to California, and then Alan flew back, and then we played some shows with our friend Eddie playing bass, but it just really wasn't the same. I mean, Vic is such a strong personality that that it's really hard to like replace him in that sense. But then we were recording the record. We wanted Vic on the record, so he flew back for the record, and then like I said, we did some other shows, and then Bold asked Tom Capone to play in Bold, so he accepted the invitation. He joined Bold, and Alan wasn't happy about that. Alan wanted Tom just to focus on Beyond. I was into it because I was friends with the guys in Bold, and I liked Bold, and they got me into all their shows for free and stuff. So I was cool, and I thought it would ultimately help Beyond if he joined Bold. So then there was that, and then eventually it was time for me to decide whether or not I was going away to college or not, and we really weren't playing. So that was kind of like, I don't think there was any, like, we agreed that we broke up. I think we just stopped playing, you know. So
and what year was that?
I would say that was 1989.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
I was thinking that. Well, I guess my dates are
in my mind.
I was thinking 91,
it was later.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I was already doing 1.6 band by 1991.
You start 1.6 band. It's a different type of band, and talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, 1.6 band was with my like some of the best friends that I've ever had. Mike Yaniselli on guitar, Lance Yeager on bass, and Vid Navarra on drums. These guys, like I said, that we all went to high school together. We all played music together. Mike and Lance were both in Third Planet with Tom before Beyond. So they had a band that they every once in a while they would play me like tapes of this band that they were doing. It was more rock. It was more like Danzig influence. I think the first Danzig record like really influenced them. And then we talked about me singing, and then I guess Mike decided, all right, well, if we're gonna play with Kevin, maybe I should write more like hardcore stuff, or we were really into the DC bands, like the bands that were coming out of DC at the time. So
I could see that connection in the sound.
Yeah, I think Mike took that as inspiration, and then he wrote these songs, and he's like Lance, he's one of the best musicians I've ever known. I mean, he's a genius, and anybody who knows him and has seen or heard him play the guitar would tell you the same. So then, all right. So then we had this band, and then and Mike's cousin owned a studio in Nassau County somewhere, and we recorded a demo. And I wasn't really particularly happy with the demo, just because I feel like I wasn't there yet vocally. Like I was talking about how Eddie Leeway by 1989 was, vocally was, really peaking. I don't think I was there yet. I was still singing on the demo like I sang in Beyond, and I feel like once we started recording records in 7 inches for 1.6 band, that's when like vocally I feel like I started really finding like my own voice, rather than either repeating myself or even at times there's so much Ian MacKaye in how I sing that sometimes I look back and I was like I really would have loved to make an effort to really sort of come up with a sound that was a little more original than something that somebody else did. So we did the album, and I'm sorry, we finished the demo, and we put it out there, and we put it out on Long Island first, like just to friends and giving it out at shows, and then we played a show up in Schenectady, New York, with Rorschach and Born Against. Mm-hmm. And they were just coming off of that tour, that famous tour that they did. This was the last show, and I didn't know about either one of these bands. I knew Adam from Life's Blood because Beyond had played with Life's Blood a bunch of times, but I didn't know Sam, and I didn't know anyone in Rorschach. So you can imagine, these guys. We pull up to the show, and these guys who have been on tour for like 2 months or whatever, they come out of their van and they have these giant beards, long hair, and they're wearing like thrift store clothes because apparently they put the dryer in one of the laundromats where they were washing their clothes while on tour lit on fire. So like I think maybe it was Sam McPheeters like lost all his clothes from that tour. So they went to a thrift store and he just bought like the most outlandish clothes. Like he was wearing these plaid pants and like they looked like maniacs. Like we were like, oh my God. But they really liked us when we played, and they loved the demo, and they were very encouraging, and they would invite us to, or I don't know so much they invite us to play, but we were definitely like seeing them at shows and sort of becoming friends with them, and we would eventually play with both of those bands. So then that's how like, we sort of became part of like the ABC No Rio scene. We would play with like Rorschach, Born Against, and all those bands.
That's what I remember. It's funny you're telling all these stories because I feel like, again, even more so than when I said in the beginning, it's like we just passed each other many times, like Sundance and ABC No Rio. When my band was playing, like Mind Over Matter was playing around that time, my band was changing. And we started to get really influenced by Born Against and Rorschach. And like I remember feeling like I'll play with anyone, I'll play anytime. And it was something about those bands, Born Against, Rorschach, and your band, that I was intimidated by because I felt like we weren't quite there yet. We weren't like good enough because we were so, like Artie and I were like listening to Born Against and just feeling like our band was like more moving towards that, but started in a different place. And that's kind of like always was my image of you was like that era, even more so than Beyond. Like I remember that the ABC No Real, like the thing that I really started to get interested in, get involved with, and my band started sounding like in those years. And I was like, 1.6 man, that would probably be a show I'd pass on. Just intimidated.
Yeah, I feel like 1.6 Band was more me than Beyond was. It's what I brought to the table with Beyond was like I showed up. I was willing to do it. Like whatever Tom wanted me to do, I would sing any lyric. I would he would coach me as a singer. Like I remember sitting in his room, he'd be like, "Yeah, no, hold this note out more, pass to the beat of the next measure or whatever." He wanted everything perfect, and he would coach me. And I was willing to do it. I was young and I was excited about hardcore music, so I was totally willing to do it. But I feel like 1.6 Band was more my band because, I didn't write any of the music, but I wrote 99% of the lyrics. Mm-hmm. And I just feel like it was just there was more of me in that than in Beyond. So that makes sense.
Did you welcome that challenge?
Absolutely, yeah, I did. I started writing lyrics pretty early, and I was like, I'm like okay at this. And then I took a poetry class at Suffolk Community College right down the block, and then I really started understanding like lyrics and like metaphor and imagery and stuff like that. And then that really helped. And I feel like after that, then I was like writing some pretty good stuff.
Yeah, and so 1.6 Band went till what year?
It's so I think we started in 91, and I think that went until 93.
Okay.
It was short-lived. Like I have a history of short-lived bands. Beyond was around for 2 years, maybe 2.5 years. 1.6 Band probably 2.5 years. Last Crime, I think maybe even less than that. Maybe only about 2 years. I don't know why that is.
Yeah, my guesses would be way off on all of these years and lengths of time because I think it's just when something means something to you back then, it feels longer. It's like a relationship, I only dated her for 3 months, but it felt like 10 years.
Yeah, I think that's youth. I think when you're young, like time, you just really don't have a grasp on time. Yeah. You're in the moment a lot, and a year will feel like a year. Now a year feels like a month.
Right.
So I think that's probably part of it.
And you are re-releasing 1.6 Man stuff. I feel like I read.
We've talked about it. Tom Capone was really interested in sort of championing the 1.6 stuff because he's friends. These were his high school friends, and he's been sort of encouraging me to approach Jordan at Revelation to see if Revelation would be interested in re-releasing it. There was people in France who were really interested in it, and I know Vinny, our drummer, was in contact with them about doing it, and then I never heard anything about it ever again. So I don't know. It keeps coming up. But the last crime was just released on cassette, like a cassette label.
Okay.
Like the two unrecorded songs unrecorded, two unreleased songs. Unrecorded.
And just as an aside, and we're not gossipy on this podcast, but I have to ask: is Tom Capone doing okay?
He's awesome.
Last we heard was the whole quicksand thing and him being out.
No, we
okay.
hung out just 2 days ago, and he looks great. He's good. He works a lot. He's actually playing with a band from California. I don't know if like what the future of it is, but I think they asked him to record, and he might tour with them. It's some like sort of industrial thing. Like it's kind of like the stuff that he's really into, so it's kind of perfect. But yeah, no, he's doing
good.
Really well. Yeah.
Saw Quicksand last night. They were awesome. Could have used a little TC3. I'll say that. But
I would definitely. I saw them last year without Tom, and as great as the musicians those guys are, you just need that second guitar player.
When you're waiting, and I'm sure Walter does all that stuff. I saw him last year too. I think at Irving Plaza, and you're waiting for that note and Dine Alone, and it comes in, but you need that second guitar, and for me, Tom is one of my favorite guitar players of all time because he doesn't wail, but the shit he plays is like so flavorful. And even if he adds 3 notes, you're like, holy shit, those are the best 3 notes.
No, he's amazing. I personally, I think Beyond is actually the best stuff that he ever did. I think because when he wrote those songs, there were no rules. And he and I have even had this discussion because he was saying when he joined Quicksand, he started taking songwriting lessons, and then he was sort of structuring songs like very traditionally. Yeah. Rather than like there are some Beyond songs where like you'll hear one guitar part at the beginning of the song, and then you'll never hear it again throughout the entire song. Like they're really challenging songs to listen to. And maybe it's because it was my band that I think that, but
I've had that discussion too. And I've come to the conclusion, like when I first started writing music, I don't know, there were no rules. And then the older I got, and the more I listened to Tom Petty's like Full Moon Fever, I'm like, oh, okay, so I'll do verse, chorus, in that format. And there's nothing wrong with it. You just like write songs, but like growing up listening to things like Braid or Get Up Kids, like there's just guitar. There's parts in those songs that you'll never hear again. You're like, oh, that was cool. And then you'll hear like 10 different parts.
Yeah, no, it's true. And I've written a lot of songs over the years on my acoustic guitar, and I sort of fall into that thing, because then in the 90s, at one point in the 90s, I really got into the Beatles, and the Beatles.
Never heard of it.
Really dig this new band, guys.
Yeah. But for the most part, their songs are structured, verse, chorus, bridge, verse, chorus.
Yeah.
And then, that's sort of. Or also to be honest with you, that's how a lot of hardcore songs are structured that way. Like verse, chorus, mosh part, verse, chorus.
Right.
Like it's almost exactly the same. And I've written all these songs over the years that like now I look back, I'm like like I sort of fell into this sort of traditional way of doing things, and then I think it was when we started doing Beyond again. I was like, that's when I realized I was like wow, he really wasn't thinking about things traditionally. He was really looking just to do something different, and like that's way more exciting than falling into the old traditional. So now when I write, I try and structurally keep things more interesting and not fall into that traditional way of structuring songs. So.
Our mutual friend had one question. Steve McCarthy wants to know.
Oh my God.
No, I mean, it's a simple question. He's
well, you know, I work for Steve McCarthy sometimes. Is this?
No, it's a band thing. He's like ask him the difference between 1.6 Band and Last Crime.
Oh, well, I played guitar in Last Crime. I didn't play guitar in. Last Crime was the same way in the sense that Steve DiPaolo wrote all the music. And I wrote all the lyrics at Ice. He also sang a couple of the songs and sang parts of songs. And so I wrote all my lyrics, but he wrote his lyrics. I was just learning to play guitar at the time. Just learning. I think it went let's do a band. Okay, in fact, I know it went like that because I remember Steve DiPaolo and I went guitar shopping one day because I didn't own an electric guitar at that time. But I wanted to do a band. And I wanted to play where I played guitar. So we bought a guitar. I bought a guitar, and then I bought a chord book to teach myself chords. And playing lefty came it was really quick. Within a couple of months, I was like, oh, I kind of got the feel for this. And Steve would even write my parts for some of the songs because, he knew I was still musically challenged. So he writes simple stuff. And, I was doing maybe 75% of the singing. So, I couldn't really get that, Nowadays, I can pretty much play and sing at the same time. It's not an issue. But nowadays, we really had to keep it simple because I was singing also. That's the main difference. Also, I think Last Crime is more metal than 1.6 Band. 1.6 Band was sort of emo-ish in the traditional sense of emo, like DC influenced, and also very technical. Those guys were into Iron Maiden, King Crimson, really into King Crimson. So the music was technical and even sometimes in odd time signatures. Last Crime was a little more straightforward, though the two songs that were never released, one of them, if I remember correctly, starts off in 5/4 and maybe switches to a different time signature. I forget, but yeah, I think there are many differences. I would say the only similarity is my voice is somewhat similar.
There you go.
Yeah,
there you go, Steve.
Thanks.
I really have to apologize to Steve McCarthy because I was supposed to work for him on Friday, and I was supposed to be there at 8 a.m. and I didn't get home from the bar until 3:30 a.m. So I ended up calling him and telling him I was gonna be late, and then I fell asleep, so I never made it. So he's probably pissed at me. So I thought maybe that's what he was.
Well, we're trying to make it up for you, Kevin.
Yeah. But really, I apologize. And also, we should take this time to mention that he has a really great screen printing business called Drummer Hair Printing. I don't know. Sorry, I'm doing
what's
your
it called?
Drummer. It's not Drummer Hair like Drummer Hair. It's Drummer Hair. I think it's a county in Ireland or something like that because his mom came from.
Oh, okay.
From
H-A-R-E or something.
It's DRUMAHAIR.
It's on Instagram.
But it sounds like
we'll put a link to it in your show notes.
It sounds like Drummer Hair, but it's actually Drummer Hair. But I feel like I owe it to him to mention that. And he actually does cut people deals for T-shirts, and he does good work. So
lovely guy.
Yeah.
I have more questions, but I have to pay.
So, all right, so we'll take a break.
In a world that moves on fast, I try real hard to make these fast. Rock up graduation like fake. People forgot when stories are made. Oh, I won. One good word. Oh, I knew. One good word. Dream on free to make a change. That's all things within my range. So many feelings that can be expressed. What will it take to leave you in class? Oh, I won. One good word. Oh, I knew. One good word. One good word. peace with the time. How much longer can't be denied? Time will come, I'll have my say. When I win, will get my way.
So, Kevin, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about your politics because, I mean, we live in a world now where, you know, we hear a lot more political opinion than we all want. Everybody has a political opinion, but you walk the walk. I know you spent a month at Occupy Wall Street.
I worked on a film. I should be upfront that I got paid. I was getting paid every day. I was getting paid $100 a day.
You did a film, yeah.
My friend Dennis was making a film called American Autumn that he was before Occupy Wall Street happened on outside Wall Street. There were these sort of coordinated events around the country that were happening. One in DC, one in New York, and they were happening at the exact same time as Occupy Wall Street. So that sort of just so the event that we were going to at in Washington DC turned into Occupy DC or whatever. And so we were going back and forth from DC to New York during that time. It was really, it was enlightening in a lot of ways. Particularly, I mean, talking politics can be boring, so I'll try not to spend too much time talking about it. But it was really important for me to sort of gain a greater understanding of like the disparity of between the haves and the disparity of wealth between the haves and the have-nots in this country. So Occupy Wall Street was definitely enlightening in that sense, and it was there was definitely a real feeling that like people were were tired of stuff, and there were people wanted things to change, and these people were smart and passionate and willing to do it. The Bloomberg administration shut down Occupy Wall Street, breaking so many civil rights. There were so many civil rights violations at that time. They weren't allowing the press near Occupy Wall Street. I saw kids just getting clobbered, with billy clubs and stuff. It was upsetting. But yeah, overall the experience was very, very inspiring. Because I mean, clearly things have to change, otherwise we're gonna die. The world is like on fire right now. So
yeah, and it's interesting too because I went one day because I just was like, I want to see what's up, and it's never, like anything else, it's just never what you see on TV. Any protest I've ever been to, I've been to, DC, World Trade Organization, and protesting, and you get home and what you see on TV is like, I didn't see any of this, But of course, it's news. They're gonna put the, the craziest.
There was actually a lot of what we shot. I think even CBS News, CNN, a couple of times picked up we were filming a movie, but also at the end of the day we would post a lot of the stuff that we shot, and that was part of my job was to like upload that video at the end of the day, put it on YouTube, and so a lot of the news organizations were picking up some of our video, and there was the one day when they were talking about shutting it down, and then Bloomberg decided at the last minute, 6 a.m. like thousands of people had showed up to Zuccotti Park to in case they tried to shut it down, and Bloomberg decided at the last minute not to shut it down. So people were so inspired from that, they decided, all right, now we're going to march on Wall Street, because they had Wall Street closed off. They wouldn't let you on Wall Street, but people were so inspired, and that's when sort of bedlam happened. Like kids were getting billy clubbed, and it was just chaos. It reminded me of the back of a Clash album. Like the first Clash album, there's like pictures of kids like rioting. I mean, the people weren't rioting. People just wanted to watch march on Wall Street. And then so a lot of that stuff that I saw that day actually end up making the news.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a weird time too, because I feel like some of the stuff, if you think of like Occupy Wall Street, I'm sure it still exists. but you don't hear about it as much. Even like, you know, something on the other side, like the Tea Party or whatever, don't hear about it. It's almost like it gets to a certain level, gets co-opted, and now we're in an era where a lot of that just isn't. Just don't hear about it as much as you did.
It like came and went, and like, you know, again, it resonated with me. You know, it definitely resonated with me, and like my sort of understanding of what's going on definitely is greater than it was before I worked on that film. Yeah, but I think you're right. I think it's because the way things are now, you know, we're just so inundated with media that, you know, things come and then the second later it's gone, and you know. But I think the people who were there definitely, you know, remember it, and I think, you know, it had its effect. I think it had its effect. Yeah.
I was just gonna say things just get splintered sometimes in time, you know.
Yeah.
If you add, the more people you add, you know, it's like just that human filter. Like, you know, there's 20 of you, and one of you is going to have a different idea, and then it's going to affect the overall vision of the 19, and it's just these splinters, and sometimes those splinters just end up fucking shit up for the rest.
Yeah, and it's almost like a protest. There was no war. There was no... It's an interesting thing that happened. Not even like a central thing that's like, hey, we're going to go do this. And so maybe there isn't like a central message in the way that people would normally have. It developed. People were like, now this is what we want. And, you know, groups come in and stuff like that. But just as like a thing that happened, sociologically, it's pretty incredible.
It was really incredible, and it was spontaneous, and it was sort of like emblematic of what can happen. You know, like you know, just with one spark can light like an entire forest on fire. You know, again, like talking politics can be boring to some people. You know, for me, you know, sometimes I definitely start thinking like, oh, I don't want to talk politics right now. You know, something like that. But you know, it's something you can't ignore because it affects our lives. And I think when we were at Occupy Wall Street, the conversations that were happening were like you know, you said they were very smart, very intelligent, and you know, and I came away from those conversations like having a greater understanding of what's going on.
Yeah. And you're doing. I know you were sort of writing something, like a novel, and now I guess you were toying around, maybe changing it to a memoir. What's up with what you're writing?
You know, I read a lot and I write a lot, so I thought, you know, I would try to write a novel. You know, it's not as easy as. Not that I thought it was going to be easy.
Yeah, I was going to say, it doesn't sound easy to me at all.
But I wanted to attempt it. You know, it's been like almost 3 years, 2 or 3 years, I forget. It's been, I'm probably on like my 7th draft right now, and you know, now I'm looking at it and I'm like, you know, I just don't think it works. You know, like I just know, like I read books a lot, so I know, like, you know, if it's not holding my interest, then it's not going to hold anybody else's interest. But there's a lot of childhood stories in that in the book that I still want to get out there, because we lost two of the guys I grew up with are no longer with us, and they're so crucial to like a lot of the stories that we have. So where I grew up in Holbrook, and on Coleridge Road, which is 2 blocks away from where I grew up. Sorry, I'm saying a lot.
Every time you mention a Long Island thing, I'm driving with you. I love all these like landmarks.
Definitely.
Let me start that over.
Yeah.
So on Coleridge Road, where my friend Anthony lived when we grew up, we hanging out, getting into a lot of mischief, and we just have these like pretty amazing stories of stuff that we did. Like and if I share one with you, because it still cracks me up every time I think about it. So behind Anthony's house was a sump. I don't know if you guys called them drainage ditches.
No, we called them
sumps.
Yeah, because I used to hang out at one down the block.
Yeah. So there was a sump behind Anthony's house, and on the other side of the sump was my friend Jeff's house. Jeff's who's no longer with us. So we were in one day. Jeff invites us over. He's got a bag of golf clubs, and he wants to hit golf clubs into the sump, which for like 15-year-old kids is like, it's you're just asking for trouble. So we're just creaming these balls into the sump, and I know I'm like, this is gonna end bad. They've got to be going over the sump, and Anthony's house is over the sump too. So so anyway, we get tired of that, but we have the putters too. So we decide we're going to dig up holes in Jeff's front lawn and practice our putting on the front lawn. So as we're doing that, I don't want to say the guy's name, but one of Anthony's neighbors comes along.
D. Snyder.
No, it's funny because I really want to mention the name because we actually had a joke. We had a joke about this guy's name too. His name sounded exactly like a song lyric, and we used to sing the song lyric to his son. Like his son had the same name, so we would like follow this kid like down the street and like tease him and sing his. But so anyway, we're practicing our putting, and so this guy comes along and he's like, "Excuse me, fellas." We look up, and he's like, "My wife and I were just having lunch in our kitchen when this just came through the window, and it was a golf." He holds up a golf ball. So like we're just looking around at each other, and he's like, "You wouldn't happen to know anything about that?" And my friend Jeff, without even blinking, says, "Well, it couldn't have been us because we've been on the front lawn practicing our putting all day." So, and he was like, "Oh, I thought maybe because you're the only people in this neighborhood with golf clubs in your hand."
Yeah.
I can't believe that he actually phrased it that way.
Yeah.
I would have been like, "Listen, motherfuckers."
Yeah.
Like,
No, he was like really just cool about
Yeah.
it. He was just like, "That couldn't have been us. We've been practicing our putting all day." So.
you wouldn't happen to know where this came, but no.
No idea.
The answer's always going to be no. No clue. Definitely can't help you.
No idea.
Now now this is a stupid question, maybe. But what about just a podcast, like with all these stories?
It's possible because my friend Anthony, who was at the center of 99% of these stories, he still lives. Actually, he lives back in the old house. Like he just moved in there with. He lives in the basement apartment in his mom's house. He's definitely around, and I should just go over there with a microphone one day, and we should just talk about like the old stories because they're really hilarious, and they've been an influence on me just as much as like Beyond or anything else. Like my sense of humor is based on the hilarity that we experienced as teenagers.
Yeah, I was just thinking like the other day, like we're watching the John Joseph thing on TV right now, Joe Rogan thing, and like just how podcasts are like the most amazing vehicles now. Everyone that we know knows who John Joseph is because of the Cro-Mags and music, but for the most part, like everyone now in like the last 10 years that know of him, or just because they're like, oh, I don't really remember this band or whatever, but like I heard him on this show. And anyone with an interesting story, like it's just like this like verbal promotion, and you just hit these pockets. Like you do enough podcasts, like you just end up on so many radars, Right. So maybe it's just my bias against books because I don't read much because I just don't have time, or like maybe I just can't read words. I don't know what it is. But like I think those stories. I think I'm not saying don't write the book, but I'm just saying like that's an interesting like B plan. If that never comes about, it's just easier.
It's really not a bad idea. Like we should just get that because the to me like when we get together and we talk about stuff, I'm like, my God, like I rarely hear other people talk about their teenage years the way we talk about like we had nicknames for everybody on the block. like there was a one guy called Gak Gak, and the reason we called him Gak Gak because that's how he laughed. He went Gak 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 Gak. And there was Civil War Buff, there was Paste Head, Fat Head. There was a guy called Snossages because he remember the commercial Snossages?
Yeah.
So he would always go Snossages. There was Fast Eddie. Oh, and there was one guy called Good Fucking Time. This was sort of like legendary. When I was like 14, I guess this is why I became straight edge because when I was 14, I got drunk at my friend Mike Bossawino's graduation party, and his parents were like, "Get him out of here." So my friends grabbed me, and they couldn't catch me because I drank like 2 big cups of vodka, and I might have even been 13, and so they couldn't catch me, and we're running on everybody's lawns while they're trying to catch me, and then this one guy comes out of the house, and he's like, "Are you having a good fucking time?" And then I was like, "No," I'm like, "Don't worry about it. Like, we're just like," and he was like, "Get out of here!" But ever since then, we call him Good Fucking Time. Like that's became his nickname.
Yeah.
So yeah, we had like all these names for people, and I don't know. Yeah, it's really not a bad idea. I actually might contact Anthony.
It even helps you, like if you're gonna write a book and put things down. Something I've noticed over the years of being on a microphone, from singing in a band to the podcast and that we've done, interviews, it's a weird thing. Like, it's almost as if people don't know what they think or what the story is until they say it out loud. And you flesh it out. You know, sometimes it's dangerous to flesh it out in real time. That might be I don't really get outraged at what people put on their Twitter accounts or say in interviews, because I know that sometimes it just, you even say it and then you're almost like, I don't really think like that. We've had people ask us to take something out of the interview that we've done, because that's how you flesh out ideas, is this. I mean, it's what attracts me to doing this or listening to other people do it, is because you figure out what you think. You think you know what you believe until you say it out loud. And it changes. And it's like a human experience. And we bash people all day because of the things they said, but we all do it. We change our minds. And if you just don't say it, if you don't know how to say it, it's more dangerous than just fucking saying it. And then, later on being like, that was a bit much, so it's a way to get those stories down.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think I think that's what conversation does. I mean, like I was saying about conversation with Occupy Wall Street. Conversation creates, obviously a dialogue, and then certain details arise that maybe you hadn't thought of, like by yourself.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a good point. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, I think before we end, anything going on with Beyond up on the calendar?
I don't think we have anything set up.
Or any of your other projects?
I'm currently, I play in another band with the original drummer for Beyond, who I was talking about before, Dominic. We play in a band called the Lost Pilgrims of the Second Plateau. And that's actually a Honeymooners reference, because when the Honeymooner, remember when Alice asks Ralph to go roller skating? And they go roller skating.
Yeah.
And because she wants to be young again.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then there's a point when they come back after he gets hurt and everything, and he goes, "Face it, Alice, we have reached the second plateau."
Yeah.
So I mean, it's middle age he's talking about, and that's I mean, I'm still trying to navigate through
I always do string of
middle age.
Peloponnese.
Yeah. String of Peloponnese. Yep.
That's the one. I always do that, and no one knows. I'm like,
Yeah,
whatever.
I love my favorite episode is the Blabbermouth episode with when the mother-in-law.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, he gives her 1 minute.
My little buttercup.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah, hello, Bunny.
Yeah.
My cat's named Bunny. Like it was. Yeah. And when we were growing up, I had a dog named Lulu, which was Ed Norton's dog.
Yeah, yeah.
Remember, it was Lulu.
Also, the Harvey episode.
Harvey.
But I digress.
Yeah. No, I could talk Honeymooners all
Yeah.
day. Like that's one thing that I bond with my dad over, is the Honeymooners. Like we know every inch of dialogue on every single episode.
Very good. But yeah, you were talking about that band. So were you guys
Lost
playing?
Pilgrims of the. We only played one show. But we're gonna do that, and I've actually been talking with Anthony Rizzo from Garden Variety about doing a band. We've written half a song already, so that's what I have in the works now, like musically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. You want to do the last question?
Sure.
All right.
All right. So the name of the podcast is If I Rule the World Podcast. We ask every guest, if you ruled the world, Kevin Egan, what would that look like?
Yeah, I don't know how this would work out, but I would try and if I ruled it, I would try and share my power with, if we could figure out a way to collectively share the power without one I mean, they tried this in Soviet Union and it didn't work out.
It's called socialism, Kevin.
But I think, I don't believe in. I believe. Well, I mean, my politics are more like democratic socialism, but I believe in collectivism, but I also believe in individualism. And I think that's actually a really big problem too. Is I don't think people are thinking for themselves anymore. I think someone said this about TV and movies 20 years ago, and maybe they were right, but so I don't know. It's hard to decipher at this point what's old man thinking and what's like actually legitimate or legitimate ideas. Like I go back and forth over that, but and this goes even back to Twisted Sister. There was
full circle.
Yeah,
I love
there was I think there was just this feeling of individualism back then. That whatever you felt these like forces. Whatever these forces were, you felt like you needed to like express, a reaction to that. And do people feel that anymore? I don't know. I sometimes I get the sense that like not a lot of people are thinking for themselves too. So but it's a delicate balance too. It's because I do believe that unless we realize that we all have a shared experience, that we're never going to understand each other, and we're always going to view each other as enemies. So.
Yeah, shared experience, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, when individuals come together, that's a powerful experience. If you know who you are, you know what you want, and you meet up with others, know who they are, know what they want. It's a powerful thing. I mean, that's in essence what a lot of our musical experience was, what our band experience was this collective band. I mean, the word band is a collective thing. And then, but there's a lot of opinions going on. Sometimes it's awful. But the product that comes out is, a lot of times incredible too.
Yeah, you're right. And I was going to say that too, that's what hardcore was all about, this collective experience,
Yeah.
But, everybody had their own band and they expressed themselves individually. So, even back then people said that this should be a model for how the world is. And maybe we were right. Maybe we were right that we should base the world like kind of like a hardcore scene,
On Possecore, at least.
Yeah, Possecore.
Possecore, yeah, definitely. Yeah. All right, cool. Thank you for doing the show, Kevin.
Thanks, Kevin. I feel like I know you better now. I feel like this is our first date.
Yeah.
To be quite honest.
I mean, no, you
now
were
I'll play with your band.
No, you're definitely someone that over the years, like we see each other's shows and we'd like rap for a little bit.
But anyway, thanks for doing the show.
All right, thank you for having me.
All right.
If I rule the world, I love 'em, baby.